Xin chào anh chị và các bạn. Thì hôm nay chúng ta đã quay trở lại với lại cái chương trình à, sự kiện BIM trực tuyến. Ngày hôm nay chúng ta sẽ tìm hiểu về một cái chủ đề là BIM 4D trong xây dựng. Các diễn giả của chúng ta hôm nay gồm có bạn David, John, James và bạn Chris. Các bạn đã có kinh nghiệm rất là nhiều năm trong cái lĩnh vực áp dụng BIM và đặc biệt là BIM 4D. Sau đây xin phép là không để mất thời gian nhiều hơn nữa thì sẽ xin phép mời các cái diễn giả sẽ trình bày. So please, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and then you guys can go ahead with the presentation.
Okay, great. You okay?
Fantastic. Yeah, I'll bring up the PowerPoint.
Okay, great. What I should mention is apologies for Chris being left off that slide. So Chris Needham's joining us as well. And yeah, well, we're lucky to have him. I'll do a quick intro as to who we are, a little bit of the format that we'll be taking as well. So this is a presentation. We're not presenting our individual organizations. We're actually offering a presentation as part of the 4D construction group. So we're an independent group of, I guess, 4D modeling enthusiasts, and our goal is to promote the adoption of 4D modeling around the world. So we share our I guess, experiences to help accelerate people's adoption. Some of those people may be starting their 4D journeys as part of their BIM, starting their BIM journeys or digital journeys. Others may be doing it already, but are looking to enhance what they're actually doing. So we try and tackle it from all angles. What we're actually going to do today is slightly different to a traditional presentation. As the group, we get asked a lot of questions about 4D modeling. And what we found in the past with other presentations or opportunities like this is to share and discuss between the three of us, kind of like a panel, what those answers to those common questions. So I'm joined with James and Chris. I guess, Chris, do you want to first introduce yourself and a bit about your background?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, I'm Chris Needham. My background is predominantly in project planning. I came up through a site engineering route and then went into project planning quite early after my university degree. And I guess I fell into 4D through that because essentially I can see 4D as a communication tool for project planning, which we'll obviously talk about. We talk about quite a lot. But yeah, my background is mainly from project planning, and that's how I've got interested in this.
And James, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I think similar to Chris, I came up through planning, engineering, working with contractors, and at the moment I'm a 4D modeler. So I work with teams building models, building 4D models, and running collaborative workshops, which we'll see in the presentation.
Yeah, and I'm David John, or DJ, as most people know me. I'm perhaps in reverse order to the paths that Chris and James have followed. So my background is I did a doctorate in BIM and dispute resolution, and I spent a long time working on blade projects around the world and how we can use technologies to support claims and disputes. Now I've taken more of a proactive approach. So now I work for a contractor out here in Hong Kong, actually, for Gammon Construction. So yeah, we've kind of got the views of a planner, a 4D consultant, and a contractor that we'll be sharing. But obviously a lot of our experiences overlap in different guises, and we'll be able to offer different perspectives, not only on just what we see, but also we get to speak to a lot of industry and share the viewpoints of different industry and different regions as well. We did a great conference in the Middle East earlier this morning. I was talking to the South American, or actually Latin American community through the university. So we got quite a wide reach, and yeah, we'll discuss some of the answers to questions now, and we'll leave time at the end for your specific questions as well, so we can delve into them. Should we crack on then, James? So yeah, first things first, without too much detail, and I won't dwell on it too much because I want us to get into the questions, but we're a wide group of different professionals. So we're not just BIM professionals, we're not just digital professionals. This page here is just the people we call the core membership, the people really active in directing 4D. And this ranges from lawyers, change management experts, planners, contractors, digital professionals, BIM people. So we don't see 4D as a specific role or relevant to a specific role. We see it as encompassing the whole of the construction community and all of the delivery life cycle. And what do we do? As I've mentioned, we're independent, so feel free to ask us any questions. We're not allied to any particular software vendors, or, you know, we obviously work for companies, but we'll give our neutral viewpoints. And I think the ones that we're expressing aren't related to our businesses. But we started meeting about 8 years ago, I think it was, and it started off as small events where based in UK, mainly London, where we'd share some of the challenges we have with 4D modelling. And then over the years, this has grown quite considerably. And it was the beginning of this year, before COVID-19, the team hosted a conference with over 100 people there. And this has grown. So we've set up a website. We try and use that as a platform to share our knowledge. But since COVID-19 and we've been unable to host the conferences, we've been trying to share our knowledge through podcasts, and online meetings like this. And actually, we've been really fortunate. We've grown and grown and grown, and we've got quite a large international reach. And we're really delighted to be able to talk to, the Vietnamese community, and I guess all of the other members from other countries in Asia that may be joining into this discussion. So yeah, really, really delighted to be here. As we go through the talk, we'll share some details, but I guess as an initial intro, for anyone interested to learn more and want to get in touch, those are a few communication channels through social media, our website, the email address. And we've also got a conference coming up in November. It's free to join. We want as many people from around the world to join. You don't have to have started your 4D journey, but it will be dedicated to discussions around 4D. So an extended version of a presentation like this, I guess, from leaders around the world. So I'll hand over to James, who's going to chair the discussion between Chris and I, and he's not getting away with it. We're going to ask him to provide his opinions as well on these different bits and pieces. But go on, James, I'll hand over to you to start the questioning.
Okay, yeah. So I'll ask the questions and you guys are going to answer, and then I'll chip in. Yeah. Okay. So I start with, what is 4D? So what is 4D to us, and what is it to those of us in the group? What does it mean?
Go on, Chris.
Chris?
Yeah. I mean, we always see it as a communication tool, don't we? But essentially, I think the starting point is most people see 4D as linking a 3D model to a schedule. So 3D plus time in its basic sense, and being able to assign model elements to your program activities, play them through, and just see how that sequence runs out. And we all say that's where it starts, I guess. But it's so much more than that. It becomes, a communication tool, basically to visualize the Gantt chart for a start, or whatever way you're linking activities, but also to, expand into other other aspects of the project, not just project planning, but things related to health and safety, you know, and then adding in other layers like your site logistics, your temporary works. So the value of it just extends beyond just seeing the permanent works in sequence on your plan. It becomes a communication tool for the whole project for a variety of things.
Yeah, so I know we often get asked, like, is 4D the right term? And yeah, what does it really mean? We had a meeting with someone a couple of months ago, and they said it's a bit like a bad nickname. Like, you get given it and then it sticks. And we've discussed as part of the group whether 4D is the right term for what we're doing. We've talked about visual planning, people couple it with virtual design and construction, lots of different terms. For us, we're trying to forget, we're fine with 4D because a lot of people understand that term and relate to that term. But for us, yeah, like Chris says, it's about a communication tool to help with planning a project better. And that's not planning a project in terms of creating a better Gantt chart or a better schedule. That's planning as in the project team coming together to discuss how they're really going to build this project. So a tool that facilitates discussion between the project team. That's not just the planner and the BIM team, that's the logistics managers, the construction managers, perhaps the commercial team, safety officers, and so forth. So it's not isolated in my opinion, and I think with many of the group, to a specific individual or a specific job title. It's to help the whole project team deliver that project better.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have people who are obviously specialists in using the tools for 4D, like the software packages or what have you. But they're just part of the team facilitating. You know, it's not their responsibility to solve all the problems. That's the whole team effort that comes together using this tool.
Okay, so there's very little I can add to that. I think you've covered everything. So if I go back to the model, so 4D, yeah, like you're saying, guys, it's 3D plus time, but it's also the process, the method of doing it that's really important. That it's important to get people in a room using the model. It's important to do it early before you've made all your decisions, and we'll talk about those things as well. But yeah, it's that, isn't it? It's collaborative planning. It's a better way of working. Mm. So if I remember the slide deck, skip through those. Why do teams do it? Why bother doing 4D? Why not stick to just Gantt charts and activities? Why is it better?
Yeah, I think obviously we sort of touched on it there. It's bringing the team together, because traditionally, sometimes you get situations where teams are in silos and they produce information independently and then kind of stick to their roles. You've got cost guys doing the cost things, engineering guys doing their bits, and then maybe the planner will do his bits in isolation. What we're trying to do here is get everyone round the table or in the room and provide their knowledge and expertise by being able to bring the plan out into something way more visual and way more engaging. So that's just one of the reasons to do it, so that you can get a better informed plan before you go and build something. And you know, that's just a catalyst for many more reasons why.
Well, and that leads to better, more certain project delivery, right? So you've got better control or understanding of your costs, better control of your timely delivery. You're hopefully creating a safer site, a more environmentally friendly site, perhaps reducing waste and I don't know, running times of unnecessary plant and equipment. So yeah, we believe that through that, well, we don't believe, we know, we've witnessed through better planning using 4D, that you can unlock some of these savings or some of these benefits. Some projects might be distressed and they're trying to pull them back online. It can help with that, but used early, it can definitely help with that front end, I guess, meeting those really important KPIs for project.
So it's time, cost, safety, and reducing wastage.
Yeah, and finding opportunities, identifying risks earlier so you can actually deal with them earlier. Because obviously the earlier you can identify things, then the more time and the more opportunity you've got to reduce them or maybe even eliminate them. So yeah, that so many benefits to getting people in a project engaged around something like this.
That's very hard to do using Gantt charts and PowerPoints and sketches of how you're going to go and do something.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I don't mind looking at Gantt charts because I'm kind of used to it. And I guess I have that picture in my head, but a lot of people hate looking at Gantt charts and, Excel schedules or whatever, because it's very hard to visualize what's going on. And even in, linking 2D plans like we used to with PowerPoint, when we do sequence drawings against the schedule, it's obviously not as visual or compelling as linking a 3D model and being able to see that sort of space element as you run through time. It gets you there faster, and it gets other people there faster as well.
So that's an important point, isn't it? That you're okay as an expert planner reading Gantt charts, but it's the team, it's the 17, 25, 50 people in the team that don't have access.
And you've got to try and get that message across, when you're putting a program together, because obviously in my role, I would do tender planning, and then I'd have to try and explain that to, my directors as you putting the bid in, and you do that by basically drawing sequence diagrams in 2D, and then obviously if your program changes, you've got to then go and change all of those. But getting that message across is a lot of work. Whereas if you've got something like this, it can be a lot quicker and obviously a lot better, a lot easier for someone to visualize and ask questions. Because you do want people to ask questions to confirm that they've actually understood it or not understood it. You want to be on the same page.
Yeah. So for me, this slide that you've got up here, James, really captivates what the benefits of 4D could be. So what we've got here is such a complex site. There's a lot going on, and I think this is only part of the site. I think there might be a little bit more happening in and around it as well. But just looking at this, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tower cranes. I think I can count just in that image.
Count just about. Yeah.
7 tower cranes looking that obviously want to be fully utilized. You've got access roads. You've got trucks parked up with deliveries. You've got, I think, lay down areas or storage. You've got big hoists there as well. And that's only at the macro level. Then at, a more I guess, I'd say micro at a floor level, which are pretty huge. You've got activities going on within that. Now, that will all be presented in a Gantt chart. And you're going to have hundreds of thousands of lines or tens of thousands of lines to try and understand. And it can be really, really complicated. And hoping that everybody in that, as part of that project team, is thinking exactly the same thing based on digesting all those different individual bits of information and thinking about what they're going to look like at a certain point in the future is very challenging and very optimistic to think that everybody's able to be on that same page. The beauty of the 4D model for me is that you're consolidating all or as much of that information as you can into a single area, a single medium, the 4D model. And you can zoom in and you can understand, and everybody in that meeting knows that on that date, this is what the construction site is proposed to look like. and that everybody can have an input to say, well, that will work, that won't work, or what other measures might be to inform that construction. So we're not waiting to be in the physical environment to have an input. We're building it digitally and then getting the team involved and having that discussion that we would have had on site weeks, months, maybe years in advance to help improve the performance of that project.
Yeah. So we did a podcast. Was it last week? The podcast with BAM, and the point there that they were making was we build it first and then we build it again. And when we build it first, we're doing it virtually as a team. So it's the same people doing the same thing, figuring out how to build something, and then they go and build it. And you improve performance by that because you're improving safety and methods, and that's what 4D is. So I think that's answered.
They used, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I will get that edited, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
And that previous slide's a good one for the safety issues, right? Like I always talk about running that safety workshop or workshops and not using it as 4D is a facilitator for that safety workshop. It's not the 4D workshop. And like here, you've got great opportunities to add that detail in. You can start tagging issues depending on what software you're using and so forth. So you're recycling that information. You're not producing your 4D for an animation. You're producing it for method statements, for safety reviews, for site posters, for inductions, for sequencing, for logistics. I wouldn't call it an output. It's a process that provides you with lots of communication measures, depending on who you're trying to get that message across to, whether that's site, senior management, projects team, whatever that might be.
Yeah, and it's these things that we can see in the image here. The actions around building, putting together what the permanent design. That's where you get the real value. Yeah. Because you need to speak to the people who are going to be doing it, your specialist subcontractors or your site managers, whatever, to get their input and get their buy-in, or just confirm that they can do what you're thinking, or what you've initially put forward as the planner, say, or whoever's putting it together initially, and then get them to do that 360 review and say, well, actually, no, we wouldn't put the laydowns there. We'd need to move them over here because of this and that. And because ultimately they're going to go and work the way that they want to work, regardless of your plan. but you need to make sure that they're in tune with the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And that it all fits together.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So how do I run a 4D workshop? What is a 4D workshop and how do I run it? What does it look like?
You're best placed to answer that one, James.
So I just answer my own question. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Your job.
I'll just use this. Yeah, I'll use this slide. So invite the right people in, which we've already spoken about. So and that's something the 4D construction group, that's what we're encouraging, isn't it? We're saying this is about people and it's a method. So invite people into the room, get the model up on screen and start talking through, just start doing it. And that might look like some of these. It might use other technology like BIM caves, but basically just get the model up and start figuring out how to build it. So this here is an example from a project that we worked on a few years ago. It's a screen record of a workshop. So this is all live, and this is myself and a colleague with maybe 8-10 of the contracting team. So we had piling contractor, demolition contractor, and the main contractor. And on the other screen was the Gantt chart. So we were going backwards and forwards in time through the activities and moving the logistics in the model. And this is what we do at Freeform, but what we kind of would want to see on more projects is this kind of behavior of planning works. And coming back to the podcast that we recorded last week, is that method of working. That's okay. How are we going to build this? Exactly what are we going to do? Let's plan it 3 months in advance of the works, so that we can then impact the temporary works and the hoarding lines and the barriers, and just figure out how to build things. And that's what we see as 4D, isn't it, guys? Is that kind of process?
Yeah, and I think, yeah, that's it. Like, to answer the question, how do you run a 4D workshop? It's like, I think first things first is run one. You know, all too often, particularly when I started looking at 4D 9 years ago, it would be someone from the BIM team or perhaps a planner that produces something and it just sits in the corner and it's not shared. They may have done it just to check their program, or someone's done it just as a, I guess, you know, they've been quite innovative and taking their, you know, using their own time to produce it. The main thing is sharing it. And once it's shared, so you may look at the models that are being displayed here and think, oh, there's extra detail there that we don't model. There's, you know, oh, we can't do this. There's no point in doing that. Those models, the detail in those models are led by the information that the team need to make decisions. So they don't have to start off necessarily with all of that detail. But as they go through iterations, as you have a workshop and the crane driver goes, oh, I need to be able to see where my, I don't know, storage areas are, or where the, I guess where the site cabins are going to be, then, you know, that can be taken away. That information can be incorporated, and the next meeting, whether that's in a week's time, a couple of days' time, whenever it might be, they can then have a more informed discussion. And then it might be the operations guys say, well, actually, we need to know the delivery route. And is that truck going to fit on that? You know, what if we've got trucks wanting to come the other way? And you can start testing those things out in the meeting. So yeah, the level of detail will improve. And don't feel, I know, Chris, you always say it, but the plan's never finished and the design's never finished. So get what you can ready and discuss it.
Yeah, I mean, you can do your best at predicting the future, but none of us will ever be able to 100% accurately predict it. You know, it's only right when it's as built. When you're looking back, as long as you've got good information, that's a different story.
You can get closer with this kind of process, can't you? You can get closer. Exactly. So more predictable.
Yes,
this is out the information. So people often think this is the answer, but it's not. This is, for me, this is the discussion. You know, this is, if this is perfect and you've got it right first time, then, you know, you're an awesome team. But to be able to get it right on every day going forward throughout the whole project is probably unlikely. And what you find is people will ask for more information. Like we said, oh, won't the scaffolding be there? And then someone will go, has the scaffolding been designed? And they'll be like, oh no, I need to do that. Or, oh, has someone procured that, you know, that specific crane? Oh no, we need to do that. And if you give yourself enough time, then you're obviously proactive about it, but it opens up that environment to have those discussions. And I always use that, but we ran a workshop, and in an hour's workshop, there were 100 questions that got raised. And my question to that is, when would those questions get raised otherwise? And they would, don't get me wrong, the team would ask, but would they ask with everybody in the room? Would everybody be on that same page? And in the meeting, you could probably answer 70, 80% of them, and everybody's on that, everybody knows. And whether that's, okay, next week we'll include that as a bit of detail. But those questions that can't be answered in the room are really important, because those are the ones that we go back and we create more information and then we incorporate them, because we need that information to build the project. If we can't do it digitally, then we're not going to be able to do it physically. So, you know, it's a really iterative process. And going back to the reason, I guess, why we started this is it doesn't have to be finished to have a 4D workshop. You know, start it and build it.
Yeah, and DJ, that workshop you're talking about, you know, you didn't call it a 4D workshop, did you? It was a health and safety workshop. But you were just using 4D as the tool, you know, as a catalyst for being able to engage people in the discussion. Yeah. So, and we would, you know, we wouldn't call them a 4D workshop per se. Like, there might just be look ahead meetings or logistics planning meetings. You know, you've just got this tool which is an improvement on the old way that you would do it.
Yep.
Like those examples that James was showing with the piling rigs moving around, you know, we'd have just done that with probably cutouts on bits of paper, like genuinely, or, you know, PowerPoint PDFs with scaled cranes or things that represented the space that they were going to take up. So yeah, it's just, it's called 4D, but really it's just a planning tool.
So there's a few other points here before we move on to the next question. Firstly, there's an investment required for this kind of thing. Obviously, we're showing stuff that takes tens, hundreds of modeling hours. And what we all believe here is that that's worth the effort. It's worth spending money at the front end of a project to ensure the physical version, so that the virtual cost, the cost of doing things virtually is far less than doing things in the field. And we would always sit behind that, wouldn't we? We'd say, yeah, okay, so for every modeling hour you're putting in, you're saving 10 times at least more, hundreds of times on sites when you come to a problem. So that's another thing to consider, isn't it? The amount of investment required.
But investment proportional to project value is generally quite low. I mean, it's hard to imagine. It's 2020, and it's hard to imagine building a considerable project, say $100 million US, without adopting in some shape or form a virtual representation of how you build it. In my opinion, we've got the tools. You know, training is available. We're connected globally. You know, that's the part of the 4D group. We want to give people the confidence to be able to start doing this and share the practice in well, how best to get what you want out of it.
So we've spilled over a little bit, but let's go on to the next question. So can I do 4D at feasibility stage? Or more of a question, when should we do 4D? DJ?
Yeah, well, we always say as early as possible, don't we?
Yeah, well, I think the answer to that is yes, you can do it at feasibility stage. And perhaps we part answered this question last time, previously. Yeah, you can. And you don't need high levels of detail. I won't steal the thunder, James, but I know you did some, you helped with some master planning, I think it was, years ago for a large developer. And actually, you know, you've only got a few bars of Gantt, you know, your Gantt chart's high level bars, and your model can just be big squares. But what I was trying to achieve was understanding like the relationship between, I don't know, railway stations, schools, whatever they might be, opening, closing times. And you can do that nice and easy with the 4D. The skill then is updating it and keeping it.
It's the same principle as if you take the BIM principles of massing in design, isn't it? Allocating space for systems. You know, you don't know what the detail is going to be, but you know that something is going to take up some space and you can make a provision for it. So it can just be a block, and then that can evolve into the detail as you go through the design process. So yeah, in the same way that you do that, you can do that at the planning, you know, project planning stage. Yeah,
exactly. It's making that provision, isn't it? And then procuring on something that's visual, not just the information we're used to seeing when we go out to market.
Because when you don't have the detail, you are going to have to make assumptions, and you're going to make assumptions based on your experience, or, you know, you're going to get the people who have good experience and you're going to ask them. And then those assumptions will become, you know, they'll become developed, and they'll just get baked in, or some of them might go away and they'll be changed. But that's all part of the process.
Assumptions are risk, aren't they? Effectively.
Yeah, or they're just, well, this is what we've done previously, and this is what worked previously. So this worked well, so we'll assume that we're going to use this method, or we'll assume that the design is going to accommodate this method of structure or whatever. So you can you can make it. There's nothing wrong with making assumptions as long as you're clear on what they are, and then they can just be explored and they'll become incorporated into the design program, whatever it is, or they'll be changed and detailed out.
I mean, we're seeing a lot more of this from Freeform as a business. That much more of the contractors and the designers and the clients we work with are much more interested now in doing early 4D modeling. So this kind of doing 4D at concept stage, like this, like we're saying, blocky stuff, that then becomes more detailed as the temporary works designer joins the project, and they'll add their information and their geometry. And then as it goes out to procurement and detailing and logistics, you keep adding to the model and updating it. And then eventually you get to construction stage and you're right down in the details. You know what your weekly operations will be, and then you're communicating that with the team, and it continues. So it's not an animation just before you break ground. This is something that continues, and like planning, Chris, is it like early planning and good planning?
Yeah. Yeah. It just evolves as more detail comes through. You can confirm what your thoughts were or change them to suit.
Okay. Is that all for that question, DJ? Nothing to add?
You can do it. Just don't leave it too late. I've worked on so many delay claims where we've had to produce these things after the job to communicate what happened, and that's an investment that project team still made, but it has little value in delivering the project better. It was just used to, when I was a dispute consultant, used to claim the money back that they felt they were entitled to. Wouldn't it have been great if they used it as part of their claim process instead of using independent experts to get that money back? So please just, my advice would be use it as early as possible and use it as a tool to encourage your teams to provide more information as you progress.
Okay, awesome. So which process is best used in 3D planning and 4D? So there's a support. It's probably best to go to this. What information, what content is, and how? What's the best way of doing it? I think we've pretty much answered this, but we could just answer it again. What's the content of a model?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the time people think there's a magic bullet, like a magic answer that says, okay, you set up every project exactly like this and you'll get 4D modeling efficiently. The reality is, like, planners will structure their time information in a certain way depending on the project type. Designers will break down their models and categorize their models in slightly different ways. Obviously, everyone should be following good practice and the ISO BIM standards and things like that. But, it doesn't always mean that it's going to be just right for 4D. So it can be quite tricky to say that there's a perfect answer. And James, I think you've probably worked on more 4D projects than anyone else maybe in the world. And I don't know, from your perspective, do you think there's obviously you've got your workflows, but they vary most times depending on project?
So it's always a mess of information on projects. Even the best ones are not aligned. So the like Chris, the work breakdown structure, the IDs, all of that, and the updating of them always changes. When we have model updates, the model updates rarely flow properly. So if we're using Revit, the families can jump around, the geometry IDs can change. I think again, it's coming back to this investment piece, that it's worth considering having a dedicated resource for doing this on large construction projects.
Yeah,
but that's something that. Sorry, Chris. Yeah.
No, go
on. Something that the 4D group are doing is writing requirements against this, and we're releasing documents soon, aren't we, DJ? So
November.
So we're trying to do these things. We're attempting as a group to do it, but there's no ideal process. There's nothing you could map out and say, if you do this as a model author or as a planner, everything will work.
No,
No,
I mean,
I think
like with every information that the quality of the information that goes in is gonna produce a better output, isn't it? But even with all that good information, people still have to do something with it. So this will get you to a point, but then people actually have to take action and carry that out following.
yeah, and on that is, so a lot of the time when it comes to the construction information, the classic one is, well, we don't plan to that level of detail. So we don't include that level of detail in the Gantt chart, or we don't include that level of information in the 3D model. And my response is, well, do you have enough information to actually build it? Because if we can't build it in a virtual world, are you confident going out there in 2 weeks, a month's time, that you've got enough information to actually build it? And it exposes quite a bit and say, yeah, but we've got 20 modules and they'll be arriving this week. And it's like, that's not enough for me. I need to know what modules are coming on different days, so I know where we're storing them, or what order we're going to start putting them up. So and it prompts that discussion, and I think it can be a bit difficult because it can, you're asking people to do a bit more work, but it's the level of information that you need to make the decisions on the project. So
and it tests your logic, doesn't it? Like, what do we need in place before we can do this? So all of those things have to line up, and like you say, DJ, it's like, okay, well, great, we've got that delivery coming, but have we got the method statements in place? Have we got the walls up? Have we got the routes planned out? How are we going to lift them in? All of these things need to be answered before that thing happens.
Yeah.
So
4D encourages that, doesn't it? There's nowhere to hide. You can't just have 3,000 activities listed out over 10 pages of PDF and say, we've got that. But on that date, that doesn't look right. You haven't considered A, B, and C.
Yeah. Or exactly. Like, things like modules is a good one, or bathroom pods, because they interface with so many other things, potentially the facade of the building. I mean, on the face of it, it seems quite obvious, but like you say, DJ, there's a lot of things which people can overlook if, say, the person responsible for producing a certain document that needs to be in place before you can do something hasn't been included, or isn't aware of the timing, and they're prioritizing something else, So it's important to understand all the information needed for each process, and then using something like this just make sure everything's lined up logically in a more visual sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that concept of rehearsals is, I think, James, you brought it up last time. I think it was you, James, and it was talking about, well, who else does rehearsals? And you've got, like, actors and actresses. They do rehearsals before they go out to perform. And, it's a lot more costly to mess up a construction project by not planning it and rehearsing it digitally than it is to look a bit silly and spill your lines in a theatre performance. But, on a more extreme measure, some doctors will do rehearsals before they do an operation. And, that's because it's the most critical thing going. It's life or death in some instances. And, there's a spectrum there from very extreme high risk to, obviously people wanting to be great professionals, but not having, a fundamental cost or safety impact. But those two areas still rehearse, and we don't, despite the huge amounts of money that we, and normally public money that we deal with. It's a lot of the times it's taxpayers' money, the people that everyone on this call is probably funding something, and we want the best for what we give to government, and this is a great way to help that.
Okay, so who should do it of the project team? Who should be not doing it so much, but who should be responsible for bringing all this information together? Or is it everyone in the team that provides information? How should it happen? So we've had this a lot, haven't we, over the years, the conversation about who should own it. And is it a planning function and role, or is it a information management role? Is it about information, or is it about time management? What is this about? How should we go about it? What would we recommend?
Yeah, it needs someone who understands the overall plan, I think, and it needs to be someone who's I guess leading the project and who's able to facilitate these kind of discussions and get good information out of people, because that's essentially what you're trying to do. You're trying to get the experience out of your team and get it into this plan. I think in my experience, where you've got team leaders who are on board with this, these things go really well, even just on a program, a planning perspective, just pure program driven.
Yeah.
When you've got people who are not interested in it, in the leadership role at the highest level, then it doesn't tend to happen very well. So you need you need someone who's going to drive it from the top, not necessarily be responsible for it, but is going to encourage everyone to get behind it. And that way you'll have the right environment and right systems in place to be able to make the most of it.
Yeah, we got an interesting scenario on one of our projects, and it's kind of two major separate work packages on the same project. And again, championed by the project director, he's the one that expects to see the outputs or the teams using that information. So when method statements are being created, he's asking the questions, why is that not from the 4D model? You've spent all that money, all that time, you're telling me you're using 4D for this, why am I not seeing it in a method statement? And then prompting the team to use it that way. But the actual roles are different. So in one of the packages, the team that are doing is the planning team. They're taking control of the 4D. And in the other work package, it's the BIM team that are taking responsibility for the 4D. I personally don't think there's a right or a wrong answer. They're both doing pretty well. And as we've said, it's a shared responsibility. It's the project team that should own it. The person that's pulling it together perhaps should be the person with the skills, the experience, the personality to drive those meetings and get that information, as Chris says. But I don't think necessarily, we haven't found the unicorn 4D planner or the optimum position. A lot comes down to the individuals and the business and the project, maybe. But yeah, it could be anyone. I think.
Yeah, I mean, like these things that James is putting up here, they're outputs, aren't they? From a point in time, a team or people have fed into this based on information that they know at a particular point in time. And that is their best guess, if you like, of how they're going to do it. Again, it's just an output. Someone with the skills in the software has put this together from that discussion, but the real value is behind the team discussion and them being able to see this and go, okay, well, this is how we all agreed it's going to go together. And then as things move forward, things will probably change slightly and this will be updated. But again, it's just an output. What actually happens will actually happen. And by going through this process, it just means that hopefully it happens closer to what people planned rather than just turning up and going, okay, what are we going to do?
Yeah. We found the best project. There's a range of success of using this method on projects, and as you'd expect, it's the best ones are where the team turn up to those workshops and they want to figure out how to build it, and then they use 4D, they use this method to figure out how to build it. And then the worst projects are the ones where the team and there's already that kind of confidence in what they're doing, and they think, okay, in 3 months' time we're not going to have problems. We don't need to see it. We don't need to figure it out. We're fine. We've got our supply chain. We've got our subcontractors. Everyone knows what they're doing. And then this is treated as an animation. It's treated as a kind of, yeah, okay, we'll create an MP4 file and we'll put it here and we'll leave it, and we won't actually figure out what's happening. So it's always depends on the team. So it doesn't matter if it's the BIM manager or the planner or whoever's doing it. It's kind of the team's attitude, and
there's a lot that can get wasted that way, isn't it? It's like if you can't get the message across, or you can't get the engagement more than anything, then it ends up like a lot of Gantt charts do in the site manager's top drawer, which is gathering dust, and this just ends up on someone's desktop somewhere, which might have been watched a couple of times. But yeah,
I wonder if there's a way of measuring. I wonder if there's a way of measuring projects against that kind of thing. Good teams, bad teams, but yeah. How well did you do?
How much do people want to, I guess, improve or plan the works, and really get engaged in the project, rather than just turn up and do stuff on the day to day. It's not me being cynical.
So I think that's almost it. So that's all the questions. We're nearly at the hour, so I don't know if that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's good. I saw there's a Slido page that's come up, and I don't know if we've got any questions in that, and I'm not sure how you'd like us to handle that. I don't know if I click it. Hopefully I'll...
Some event thing.
Yeah, I can share the Slido now, or you can open that. Hang on.
If you could share, that would be great.
Okay. So we have quite a few questions here.
Okay. I'm not. You might need to help me with the top one.
The top one is it's about some people want to have this event to be translated into Vietnamese, but then due to our limited time, I don't think that we can do that. I'm gonna answer that in Vietnamese, because some people they would like to have that translation, but it would double the time. So
okay, yeah, I understand.
Thì về cái câu hỏi mà tại sao mà ban tổ chức không dịch ra tiếng Việt để mọi người cùng theo dõi sẽ hiểu vấn đề hơn ấy, thì do là hôm nay 3 diễn giả thì thời gian cũng hạn chế, tức là tổng thời gian trình bày của họ chỉ có thể là 1 tiếng thôi, thế nên là ban tổ chức đã quyết định là không dịch tiếng Việt nữa, tại vì là như thế nó sẽ bị gấp đôi thời gian lên. Xin anh chị thông cảm. So would you like to go for the next one?
Yeah, so in terms of the software, so as the 4D modeling group, we're actually doing a software review. So we get asked this a lot, what software is the best? We're doing a review of lots of the different pieces of software. Now, we try to remain as independent as possible, so we don't promote any specific pieces of software. And actually, we're very open to hearing and learning more about different 4D softwares, hence why we're looking at it. My answer, without naming any software, is it depends what you're trying to achieve. So some software is a lot better for running a detailed 4D workshop. Other software is perhaps better for a tender simulation, or some softwares might be better for producing a specific detailed method statement, or if you want to give people a view around the construction site. So a lot will depend on, in my view, and I'll let the others have they might want to name some softwares that they use. A lot will just depend on what you want to output. And I think maybe watch this space from my side. James, I don't know if, or Chris, I don't know if you want to share your experiences on that.
Yeah, it's very much again, there's so many things that could affect it. Your budget, there's obviously loads of different price points out there. But some will do more than others, or a lot more than others, and some will just do things on a basic level. I guess if you're going to have a range, things like if you're a power project user, for example, you've got the bolt-on that Alicosoft do, which is Power Project BIM, relatively cheap and can get you to, something quite quick, just because it's already within Power Projects. You just link directly to an IFC and allocate your tasks to it. Where you can go further into more detail, things like Synchro, a bit more expensive, but pretty much it's very flexible. James, obviously, better place to talk about that than me. Maybe limited graphically to some extent, but then you've got things like Furza, which are pretty good graphically, but maybe limited in other areas like schedule or whatever. So yeah, and obviously that price point goes from low to high from what I've just said.
I've got not much to add, apart from everything. So everything you've seen today is Synchro Pro from Bentley Systems. We're using 3 or 4 packages at the moment, but as DJ said, watch out for our solutions review, which is coming out soon.
Yeah.
So next question, is it effective in a developing country like Vietnam? DJ, do you want?
Yeah, without question. I mean, there's probably a lot of the world's outsourcing of BIM and digital work probably sits in Vietnam. I think the talent that is within Vietnam for digital construction is quite vast, and don't underestimate your own potential that's sitting within region or within country. So I think you've got the skills, you've got people that can help you train if you don't have the skills in-house. In terms of cost, as we've been saying, this should be a cost saving or cost neutral, if anything, from an investment point of view. Now, having moved to Hong Kong and as I said, spoke to different projects around the world, there are regional and cultural things that need to be considered, particularly when building projects, and Chris will be way more better placed than me, but like labor might be cheaper in some areas, so you won't want to be saving, the target of 4D wouldn't be to reduce labor, it might be to improve, I don't know, offsite manufacturing or something like that. So it depends how you use your model and what you want to achieve from it, but without question, it's suitable for Vietnam. I've not worked there, but I don't see why any country would be limited by how they could adopt 4D in some capacity.
Yeah, wherever you've got to plan something and communicate it, this is going to be useful.
Yeah. Okay. Is your 4D group open for joining? Yes, 100%. There's a number of ways of doing it. So you can join us on LinkedIn. We've got a group on there. You can visit, I don't know if we have the link, if we can bring the link up again in a minute, but join us on our website and forum. And if you're really into it, you're more than welcome to start writing articles with us and get in touch at our email address and really get involved.
Yeah, we're definitely free. We want to share experiences, and even if you're not doing 4D modeling or aren't a digital professional, please feel free to join. The website, I think we'll put it up in a bit, but it's www.4d.construction, quite straightforward. And as James said, there's forums on there, and we're still relatively new with the website. We want to build it up with more and more, but we've just
got to do it around the day jobs.
Yeah, Yeah, emphasize that this isn't we've all got jobs, so we're doing this in our spare time. And yeah, we appreciate anybody that wants to join or get involved and share their experiences. Is there one more question underneath that one?
Yeah, but I would like to take the occasion with the question about, is it effective in a developing country like Vietnam? Because you know, when we have the National BIM program, by following the pilot projects, we saw that a lot of company and expert can develop like with the initial plan, like you can have a very beautiful planning in the beginning, but they fail to kind of update that with the construction. A lot of pilot projects in Vietnam, in the beginning, they plan to have like a 4D, but in the implementation, they found that updating that with everything happening in the construction site is very difficult. So at the end, they have to give up that initiative. So could you share your view on that?
Yeah, that happens here too.
Yeah,
it happens in the UK. It happens everywhere. People will start out, you know, with with a nice animation to show people how it's going to go together, but they don't carry it forward, or they don't resource the project enough. Like James says, it needs a resource to put the effort in, to constantly. If you're constantly updating your program, then you need to be constantly updating your models, don't you? So it's that additional resource to be able to do that, which people have to factor into their projects. If they truly believe, you know, as we do, that you get more value out of the project and the project team by doing that, then it's, as DJ just said, it's an investment that is either cost neutral or provides more benefit. So that's the, and you know, that's not just Vietnam. That, like I say, that happens here. Traditionally, there's not enough resource on projects put into things like project planning, and it is, you know, it's a problem, but it's something that everyone's got to learn to change, hopefully.
It looks like there's a lot of questions on this, on resourcing and cost. So the cost of applying 4D. Does one guy do the 4D for the whole project? How does 4D outsource? So if we're going to address this, I'd say you need, let's say, of a certain project size, anything above a certain project size where the risks on the project, just the cost risks on the project are of a certain value, it's worth having at least one person dedicated to 4D on that project full time. Now, okay, so maybe that needs to be justified, and there needs to be some benefits. Why do we have? So we've got a project team of 15 people in our main contractor. Why do we need an extra person? Well, it's because your risks look like this. Your costs, the cost of the project is what, let's say $50 million US and upwards. Any project of that size, $20 million, you can kind of start justifying why you would have this extra cost. It's a big conversation. It's a big discussion, isn't it?
It is, you know, people will want to look at it at a business case level, which makes sense. Like, what is the business case for us having this additional resource and this additional time? But where you've got that level, that value of project, and say, you know, it's maybe an additional 2 people on the project and you've got to pay their salaries. But if going through this process, you save 2 weeks on the overall schedule, and, you know, your site costs are running at 100,000 a week or something, then you've paid for their salaries more than. And that's the kind of business case that you have to think about. Yes, it is kind of speculative because you don't necessarily know that you're going to realize that value, but you have to believe in the process that, okay, this is our target, you know, this is what we want to achieve by working this process.
There's, not to complicate it, but there is good 4D and bad 4D as well. So there's a lot of projects that we've gone into where there's 4D being done, but it's being done like we've talked about as a very good looking animation that's really flashy and perfect, but doesn't bear any relation to what the construction team need or want to do. So you get project teams who kind of shrug and say, well, we're doing 4D, but it's not giving us any benefits. So it's kind of, well, okay, there's a lot of things to consider. It's more complex than just putting a person on a project and saying you're doing 4D. You have to consider quite a few things.
And I'd say that's the same with any process, even with BIM. You know, there's a lot of talk about, oh, BIM's going to save the world of construction. Yet people are still working in silos, yet they say that they're working in a BIM environment, which is impossible, because the whole point of BIM is everything's supposed to be shared, and you know, you go through this process, and by going through the process properly, you should avoid these costs and minimize these issues that come through design and through the management of the site. And it's the same with 4D project planning, whatever you want to call it. If you're not getting people together, so even to the guys who are going to be installing the work, understand and are on board with what you're doing, then it won't work. It will just be the same as the planner doing his program on their own, and the site team doing something different, because they're just not talking to each other.
Okay.
So you've got to be committed, basically. You know, you can't just produce an output and think, oh, that, well, we've done this now, let's get the deck chairs out and just watch it happen. It doesn't happen like that. It's a constant workflow.
Yeah. So do you say that in order to have a successful 4D projects, we need to kind of maybe put some requirement into the contract with the contractor and subcontractor as well?
Yes.
So that they can...
It's really useful to do that. It's really useful to set some kind of requirements and something around it. It's just so that the supply chain, the subcontractors, the main contractor, the client, the designers know what to expect, what they need to deliver. It is very useful to have at least a few pages, a few clauses that point to this.
Yeah, but you've got to make it process focused and not just output driven, because it's too easy for people to get around that. You know, there's like, well, I've done a 4D model. I've complied with that contractual term, but you're not actually using it. So, you know, you need somewhere. It's not enough to just put it in a contract, because people will always get around it some way. It needs to be a mindset on site. You know, you won't solve the problem just by putting it in a contract. It needs to be a mindset on site that the whole team buys into and actually delivers in that way.
Which we are also. So again, the 4D construction group is at some point quite soon releasing a document or first draft of a document that does that. So this is a separate one. This is we're calling it employees information requirements, but it's a bit more than that, isn't it? It's a kind of a standard that you could work to that's process driven, not output driven. So we're not talking about animations. We're talking about what to expect from your construction team and by your construction team. So watch out for that document.
I think just quickly adding to that is, like, having it as a requirement obviously means that something's going to be done, but as an organization, you know, we don't do 4D because we're asked to do 4D from a contractor's perspective. We do 4D because that's the best way for us to manage and plan our projects. So I guess it's that shift in mentality of like, oh, it's not something we're being asked to do. It's, oh, this is actually really valuable to us. You know, we want to deliver it. So, and I know it's tricky for things that you've never done before, and particularly if you're trying to convince senior management that might see it as a bit of a gimmick, but it's hard. It shouldn't be viewed as a bolt-on. I think that's the main thing. And that's when it comes down to cost. This is the general thing. It's seen as a cost when it's seen as an additional activity, where actually it's a fundamental activity to deliver the project. So it shouldn't be an extra line item. It's part of, in an ideal world, the planning situation. And I know that's not all, that's easier said than done when talking to the people that are making the decisions. But in an ideal world, it's like the 3D part. You don't want, in a pure BIM world, as people are taught, you don't have people doing the 2D and then people converting that into 3D. You're designing your 3D in the first place. Now, planning is a little bit different because we'll still be producing our information in the traditional forms, but you know, it's part of the design, the same as part of the planning, the same as BIM is part of that design process. So
nice. We've got quite a few questions, so should we kind of speed answer now? Because we're
maybe be conscious of time. So maybe I don't think that we need to answer all the questions today. I can grab that and then we could answer later on Slido if you want, because I'm not sure if you guys have.
We could do a podcast.
Yeah.
I'm okay to stay on for another 10 minutes to answer some of these questions.
Sure.
I like the podcast idea.
Yeah. In a huge project, you manage the 4D by using one model with a very large, so 100,000 3D objects. So a solution like Synchro can handle that straightforward. You need a pretty decent machine, a computer to do that, but yeah, single model.
Yeah, so scale of levels of planning modeling in BIM. We're creating a maturity measure. So again, this is quite nice actually, because the efforts we're making as a group seem to be tying in with a lot of the things that you're asking for. Now, the maturity measure is not just based on how pretty it looks. The measure is on how it's used, how the team are engaging, and you know, the kind of the wider discussion we've gone through. But the concept of that is it will follow traditional maturity on a measure of 1 to 5, and it will help organizations, projects plan to, I guess, upskill or improve in their 4D process. So I'd say, yeah, November at that conference, was it 3rd of November? We'll be starting to release this information. So yeah, and I think April's kindly put a link to the website, which has the conference details in the group chat as well. Should we quickly, are there any more questions? We can quickly close out for a minute or two.
Yep.
Do you split your big model in several? On that top question, on the very large models, so some of our very big ones, yeah, we might split it out, but again, because we're using Synchro Pro, it pretty much takes anything. So everything we've seen here today is single model. One model.
I think that there's a person who raised hand. Chị Quý hay là anh Quý? Chị Quý ạ. Chị Quý có muốn mở mic ra để trao đổi.
Hello. Yes, nice to meet you, speaker. Sorry, I just joined in halfway of the discussion, but actually it's a very interesting topic. Actually, I'm not based in Vietnam. I'm based in Singapore, and in Singapore, BIM is more mature than in Vietnam. But the issue is the same. The focus of 4D BIM is only for client's need rather than for actual site usage. So right now in Singapore, the new direction they are looking at right now is how to go to cloud. So my question to you is, what in your opinion, what is the potential to have 4D construction on cloud? And whether it is a new way to do 4D or not, so that we can have a fully collaboration platform for the whole construction team.
Just missed the last bit of that question, sorry.
Sorry, a bit noisy at my place now, so sorry about that.
That's okay.
So my question is about on the future of 4D, because right now everybody talking about cloud, everything go to cloud and everything on internet. So understand this, for 4D we need a very powerful machine. So there will be like conflict between these two directions. So in your opinion, what will be the direction for 4D construction in the future? Will it be like on cloud? And if it should be on cloud, because for clouds, we can see that it can become a fully collaboration platform for the whole project team. Can log in and see the project status or the models at any point of time. But if we need to go to cloud like this, what is the requirement for us to go? And whether we need to change anything in our current process or our practice or not.
Yeah. So I think the shift towards the cloud is pretty inevitable. When it happens, I guess we don't know. There's some software that allows you to do that already, maybe for an additional cost, but it's getting there. I think that well, look at what we've been speaking about the whole of today. It's all about the team engaging and collaboration. If the software is restricted to one laptop or one computer in a project site, and people, if it's on a computer and that can't be taken to a meeting room, you've limited yourself already if you can't steer it and navigate it. And as a consequence, we produce different outputs. So we produce the video, we produce the PowerPoint decks, we produce the imagery, which is great, but sometimes we want to get into that model. So yeah, I think that it will, and I think watch this space. I don't know if you know the answers to this question, but yeah, I think it's definitely going that way in terms of where the vendors are and actually where the benefit is. Sorry, just very quickly on the risks. It's the same with the 3D environment. We've just got to be careful with permissions and who accesses and updates information. With 4D at the moment, it's the link between the 3D and the Gantt. It's whether you want to keep your Gantt chart as the kind of the master document, and then you import it into your 4D environment. Because at the moment, the softwares for 4D, people still tend to use traditional, people are still using traditional 3D tools and they're using traditional Gantt chart tools, and then you bring them together. And people normally want to control it in those separate environments and pull it together in 4D, which I don't think is a bad thing, actually, if you've got your workflows right. If you try and model and produce Gantt in the same environment and update, yeah, you really need to have a strong process, and yeah, that will depend on the project.
Yeah, that might be the future.
Yeah.
Who knows? We talk about model-based planning, and maybe we'll get there one day. But yeah, good. Just like you say, DJ, the point about the cloud thing, I think it will go that way, because we're always trying to get an interface that the way you engage people is giving them an interface that they can intuitively use, and that's often a barrier with a lot of these. It needs a specialist to understand them and work with them. To get people more interested, it needs to be something that they can almost use without any training. So someone's going to come up with that solution one day. And
the big software providers are they've all got this on their roadmap to go full cloud. And every startup that we meet, like DJ, we're meeting startups once, twice a week. Yeah. They're all cloud-based. Yeah. So yes, definitely. And I think, like Chris, to your point there about access, and you'll still have specialists. You'll still have those that can operate the tools and processes deeply, but cloud offers a kind of front end. So almost like playing computer game, like video game, where it's hard to break what's under the surface, but you can run around the model, you can do whatever you want. And it's kind of almost like PlayStation controllers, Xbox controllers. You're using a game controller to interrogate and play around in the space, but you'll have specialists. So we might see a split over the next 5 years of the specialists and everyone having access to it using a game engine kind of interface.
Sure.
Thanks a lot for your answers. This is the question I'm helping get. I keep getting from the clients in Singapore that they always want to go to cloud. So I really hope that we can work with you someday to review some of the potential software or tools so that we can introduce to the clients here in Singapore. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, we'll get in touch. And if you're based in Singapore, please reach out to April, who's shared the link in the group chat. She is in Singapore as well, so and part of the 4D group. So please get in touch with her, and maybe you can share something regionally together.
Sure. Thanks. Let me see. Thanks a lot.
No problem.
So maybe one last question about the 4D workshop. Are you guys only run that for GC and subcon, or you require PM and the client to be there as well?
The more the better. Obviously, it's good with the general contractor and the subcontractors, but if you can get, we've worked on a lot of projects where the client will drive it and they'll turn up to the workshop and say, okay, what's going on? And that's good. Also designers, it's useful to have designers come into some of these, and we have that a lot, those kind of meetings.
Yeah, I think that, and Chris, it depends what the contractor wants to share, right? Yeah. Around the world, most contractors are they report at the level that they're required to in the contract, and then they'll have a more detailed mechanism for managing at the site level. And yeah, it really depends on who's engaging and what level of information everybody's kind of privy to and and expected to deliver. So yeah. I think if you're a contractor and you're working with your subcontractors to deliver a 4D model, you're doing a good job. If you're getting that level of engagement and you're bringing the team, your supply chain in, I think, you're making a very, very good start there. Just sharing it within your own team's a good start, let alone bringing your supply chain in. Engaging with the clients, yes, for the reporting and everything from the contractor's perspective. If it's client-led, obviously you can ask for a bit more and you can uncover a bit more and ask the teams to show you a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it depends on the relationships that you have in the project. You can normally tell the way the contracts are set up, if it's going to be, oh, we're just going to hide everything because, we're adversarial, or you've got people who are really open and actually genuinely want what's best for the project, rather than their own agenda, trying to maximize, the contractor might be trying to maximize their own profits or whatever, which generally everyone is trying to do, of course. They want the best for themselves, but if you've got stuff set up from the start that is best for the project, then the more people you can have in there who are going to provide a relevant input, the better, really. Even down to the employer, because they might see something that you're talking about and go, oh, I've got a bit of information that is going to come your way, which might change that. And if they can give you that earlier, or at least an indication, then it's like, okay, well, let's have a think about how that's going to affect things then. It's so, but like DJ says, basically just do something. So whoever you can get involved on any level that you can, the better. More opinions generally, as long as they're from a good place, are good to have.
Chắc là còn thời gian khoảng từ 1 đến 2 câu hỏi. Không biết là có anh chị nào muốn bật mic và giao lưu với lại 3 diễn giả của chương trình không ạ? There's the question on the estimation of time. Could you answer that? Because I think that there is 2 questions about the cost. One is the estimation of time for 4D modeling in comparison with 3D design modeling. And the other question is about the cost. I think the 2 questions related to each other. Let me see. Yeah, it's like implementing 4D is more cost. So how to convince client to do 4D? Because cost and the time to put into to model this thing and to continue to update the model during the construction is, I think it's a big question as well. Of course, that you guys talk about business case, but do you have like a you know, some like a notion of you know, like how much time comparing to 3D modeling? Because then some client might say, yeah, we are happy with 3D already, and then for 4D is a little bit out of the budget or something.
Yeah, so from my perspective, the contractors implementing 4D, what I find, and Chris and James, feel free to chip in, is clients actually welcome the fact that you're gonna, if you provide a detailed plan of how you're going to deliver 4D and what the values are, they tend to welcome it. There are too many projects around the world that overrun on time and budget. And if you can show a way of providing a greater level of certainty for 4D, then they'll normally be at least open to it from a contractor's perspective. So yeah, James, I don't know, you probably tender and bid for the more in that area. I might have a different view.
I think that, so it depends on the cost of the 4D. If you're, there's a huge, because with any new, let's say it's a new process, a new method, a new technology, it's a very wide range you can pay. So it's whether you're getting the value back from it. So how much are you expecting to pay? And we've been on a lot of projects where there's a lot of money already been spent on 4D and not much out. And it's a very nice looking animation, but it doesn't really do anything. So if you've spent that money, then an employer would say, well, I've just paid a very large amount of money for something that doesn't offer any value, so they won't use it again, and they won't be happy paying for it. So it's unlike other things like steel and concrete. We all know the prices of these things. It's obviously a mature market. We know what we're buying, and we know what's expensive and what's not. With something like 4D, no one really knows what they're paying for, and so you get a very wide range of cost. So it's very hard to answer that. I don't, Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, maybe. So in Vietnam, we have a very interesting case. Is that I think last year or 2 years ago, we have a very high skyscraper with 81 floor, and the contractor like a volunteer to use Synchro to assess the feasibility of installing the antenna at the top, because they fear that once they if they are not sure that they can install that antenna when they are at the top, there is no way they can they can solve that question later. So they need to make sure in the beginning that they can do that before going into the projects. Yeah, so that might be so maybe the answer would be like do a business case and then sell that to the client.
Yeah, there are examples like that. I mean, we always have the Moorgate example, which we talk about with the temporary works that were avoided by effectively getting the team to look at alternatives. Well, firstly look at how we were going to do it with the temporary works design as it was, and then coming to the point, well, actually, let's go back to the designers and see if they can do something different, so we can eliminate it completely. And obviously, that saved a huge amount of money and a huge amount of time on the project. And you get things like that which are quite obvious. And that example you've just said there, doing that digitally before you actually get to build it is obviously saving a huge amount of money or avoiding a huge amount of cost. potential cost. But these are potentials, you know.
Yeah,
They're all estimates. But if they panned out the way that you thought, then you have gained value. For what is probably a minimal outlay, you know, someone's resource and time.
So as a reference, Chris, that was maybe 200 modelling hours.
Yes, it's not a lot, is it? You know,
and then that saved very big numbers on the project.
Yeah, you know, you're talking 6 months on a program, millions of pounds. So those scenarios, you know, that's a big win for a very small initial cost, and it's an easy business case, and you'd buy that every day. You know, you'd buy that every single time. And it's those kind of things that we can give examples of, but of course every project is different and every team is different. And the only reason that was successful was because we did it early, and was because we had the right people involved down to the client. The client was invested in it as well, the employer. So it needs and we said about it before, you know, it's got to be led from the top. And whether that's the contractor leading it or the client leading it, someone needs to lead it and be on board, so that within your organization, at least, you're determined to see the value. And obviously, if you plan to get certain value out of it, more often than not, you probably will. It's only if you just go into it blindly thinking, oh, we've got a 4D model, this is going to solve all our problems. It's not, you know, we've got this nice output. It doesn't build the job, the people build the job, and they have to continually be engaged and update it.
But maybe I think that for a certain type of projects, there's some specific point that we need to look into that, and 4D might be useful for that. For example, you know, so we can kind of summarize for each type project. For example, building, we need to look at a certain point, or, you know, for infrastructure is another thing. We can see that on your website you have 4 case study. To your knowledge, is there any publication or, you know, article or book that kind of summarize that in other you know, in a lot other case study?
So I don't know. I spent a long time researching this, and I don't know if, since I guess finishing my doctorate, I obviously don't get a chance to read as much of the literature. Part of the reason for setting the group up was we feel there's an absence of this. There's universities in America, that Stanford University, that invest and have invested quite a bit into 4D modeling. They put some arbitrary figures on the savings of 4D, and from using 4D in a certain way, I can't remember exactly. I think it was they expected 3 to 6% of the project value to be saved. So it wasn't a cost, it was actually, they were seeing it as a saving. I wouldn't want to stand by that figure because I've not tested it, but I don't see why. And in all honesty, it's not 4D alone that helps with this. It's when you do 4D properly, you do a lot of other good things properly, and it's those things that make the savings. So isolating it to an individual thing is quite tricky. But if you want to look for some reading, have a look at Stanford University's
is that SciFi Center for Rated Facility Engineering? Yeah,
Martin Fisher's the professor from an academic point of view that you'd probably want to look at. In terms of other bits and pieces, we're trying our best. So we want to talk to anybody that's enthusiastic about 4D, and we'd love to be that central point for this kind of, you know, industry's point of view. And so many times we get asked to identify, like, the costs. Okay, you can kind of get your head around, but the savings are the tricky part, because they're not all hard savings. Some of them are soft. Like if you avoided an accident on a construction site, I mean, 4D for me, that's the biggest benefit, to plan your work in a safer way. And you know, putting a dollar sign on that is quite challenging. And going back to a point that you made earlier, sorry, I've got to go because I'm overrunning for another meeting, but I think I agree with your point about focusing on critical or high risk areas. And I understand that, but actually from years, and I think Chris and James will vouch for this, the beauty of 4D is you find risks in areas that you didn't realize when you do it on scale and properly, because the areas that require most of the safety get a lot of attention already. And it's normally the relationships between different tasks or packages where those risks might occur, and they might not be modeled. And it's those areas that you can find a lot of benefits and savings. So I do understand saying looking at a critical aspect of work, but what I found is that when you do a critical aspect of work, then it will start growing and people will be like, oh, how about we explore this? And how about we do this? And how about we do that? And what happens is you start looking at all of the separate areas in quite a bit of detail. Now, that becomes quite costly because you haven't modeled it as a whole. You've looked at it as 5 separate projects than as one whole project. So you kind of don't get the scale of benefit that you were looking for. So it's a tricky one, and I understand why you're asking the question, and I don't think there's a perfect answer. But yeah, my view is model as much as you can, and well, I think I probably learned this from James. Model as much as you can to a certain detail, and then, you know, in your critical areas, you can start enhancing that detail. And I don't know, James and Chris, if you just want to close out, if you want to say I'm talking any nonsense, or if your experiences are the same with that.
No, I agree. Fine.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to look pretty either. We say, you know, it doesn't have to.
Nice if it's pretty, though.
Like obviously James's models look beautiful. You know, he puts a lot of effort into these things. But you know, if you've got, it's just doing something. You know, do something that you can. Like, if all you can do to represent, say, some scaffold is draw a box, then that's fine. You know, draw a box. At least you're planning. At least you're representing the space. As long as you're telling people what it is, you know, you're at a level of detail, and you can get a conversation going with someone who can fill out that detail. You know,
that's really important advice, actually. Yeah, is just start doing it. Don't. Yeah.
Don't wait for it to be perfect. Like we said before, it doesn't have to be perfect.
So
cool.
I think we can stop here. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing a very interesting presentation today. We hope that we can see you guys in you know, next event to share maybe more detail on this topic. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
And thank you for having us. And I think going back to Chris's point, if you'd like to share these questions with us, we'll do our best to answer the ones that we haven't already.
I will gather the question and then send to you by email.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Cảm ơn tất cả mọi người đã tham dự chương trình.